Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.
The Wi-Fi's down and I can't post. I'm a little bit antsy, so long as I can get a couple of things on the site today, I'm kind of happy. I'm like a Star Wars junkie.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Hello there. This is Dave, and I'm an original trilogy kid.
And this is Alora. I'm a prequel trilogy kid. Welcome to What Does Star Wars Mean to You? The show where we talk to all kinds of fans of Star Wars to take the hate out of the debate and look at the franchise from a certain point of view, one fan at a time.
And so today we're going to talk to Mark Newbold. He's been a writer for the Star Wars Insider since 2006. He's contributed to the My Star Wars, Red 5, and Launchpad sections, as well as feature articles and interviews, which sounds like someone who's been talking to fans for a long time.
This is what Mark does. Mark talks Star Wars, and I'm very excited for him to talk Star Wars at us. Yeah.
Yes. He's also the editor-in-chief, talks Star Wars at us. He's also the editor-in-chief of Fantha Tracks, which launched in October of 2017.
I love that podcast, actually. It's super fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he's also a frequent writer for print and online magazines, including Star Wars Insider, Build the Millennium Falcon, Starburst, and Star Trek, the official magazine. I've never heard of this Star Trek before. I don't know what that is. Mm-mm. And he's been a fan since 1978 when he first saw Star Wars.
We've got an OG fan who has made a career of talking Star Wars. Is that just not envy making?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's going to be... So I'm kind of hoping, I really want to see what his take on fandom over the years has been.
Mm-hmm.
And also how he just navigates the waters of fandom and how his own fandom has affected his creativity or his work as well.
Yeah. It's also been a huge, I think Star Wars has been a big part of his creative outlet throughout his life, obviously, because, he's dedicated a lot of time to writing and interviewing. But he's also got a background in some serious fan fiction and comics and audio
drama.
Drama,
yes,
which is super rad. And I hope we can dive into that a little bit with him.
Awesome. Let's go talk to him.
Hi.
Hello. How you doing?
How are you doing, Mark?
I'm very well. I'm really looking forward to this.
I'm so glad you put out the bat signal to mix fandoms and said you wanted to do some shows.
Yeah, I love talking to people about anything because I like to talk. But Star Wars is always cool. So I'm here to talk.
Well,
Star Wars is always cool.
This is the first question we ask everyone. Are you ready to share with the world what Star Wars means to you?
I think so. Yes, that's a definitive yes. Definitely.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mark. Like we do, we start with 5 with the Force. These are a standard set of 5 questions we ask all our guests. It kind of gives us your Star Wars baseline.
Okay. Yeah. So, which Star Wars movie is your guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. That's a great question.
Guilty pleasure. Different than
I
favorite.
would say it is different than favorite. I would say Attack of the Clones. That's comfort food to me. I love that film.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Yeah.
I fully agree. Do you have a D6, Dave?
Yes, and I rolled a 6.
You rolled a 6. Okay, so what is your favorite spaceship or vehicle?
Oh, it's tough to look beyond the Falcon. It really is. But I've got to say, I do very much like the Razor Crest. And the Onyx Cinder is something else. I want to see more of that ship. So I'm cheating. I'm giving too many answers. If I pick one, it's the Falcon. It's got to be the Falcon.
Sure. No, good, good solid choice. Yeah.
Just spread it out a bit. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite line to quote?
Oh, wow. I don't know if I have a favorite line to quote. But they always seem to work their way in. I tell you one that's really that I say in conversation sometimes and don't realise I've said it, and it was actually used in Skeleton Crew.
Oh,
the line, that's the real trick, isn't it? The Han Solo line.
yeah.
And when that sneaked into that pirate saying it to John as he was wheeling SM33 out, I was like, nice. That was a cool little touch. So I thought, is it just me hearing it? No, it's actually a thing. So I'm going to pick that.
I like that. There's so many good Easter eggs in that show. That was just like a love letter to the whole fandom for
Completely.
sure.
Yeah, it was a treat.
So besides the films, what is your favorite Star Wars content? Anything from like the TV shows, the comics, the games?
I've really enjoyed the TV stuff. I very much enjoyed the animated stuff. I really hope there's more animated stuff coming. And I guess just over the years, I would probably say the comics. I mean, the books, there's so many books and it's so time intensive to read everything. I can't pretend to have read everything. And these days, doing Fantha and all the other stuff I'm doing, I kind of skim read to the best that I can. So I've got enough of an idea of what everything's about. I couldn't even pretend to say I read everything because I just don't, there's not enough hours in the day.
Much.
Yeah. But comics, I'm pretty much on it. And we try and review as much as we can on the site. So I think I'm kind of on top of the comics as much as you can be. But you know, that old Marvel run back in the day, that's really, I think, looking back, what hooked me in. So I'll probably say the comics.
The comics was one of my, like, favorite things about, like, in the 80s, because there was just not as many Star Wars stories around back then. Yeah. And so getting those comics was, like, a real treat to, like, live the adventures, even though, you know, it was 3 years between every movie.
Yeah. And back in the day, it was, you get a comic and you knew there was a month. I mean, in the UK, we had weeklies. It was a bit different. And then it went monthly later on. But, you know, you had a week or a month, and that was all you were getting. So you read that thing 20 times in a month. So
yes,
I'll read a comic once now, Mylar, bag it, put it away, never get seen again.
Yep. That's very true. It's very true.
How the times change.
Oh, yeah.
Well, speaking about that time, what was your first introduction to Star Wars, and can you take us through that experience?
You cut off my 5 with the Force, Dave.
I did? Oh, my God. I'm so sorry.
Shock. Shock.
That was...
Please, guys, please leave this in. Please don't edit that out. Leave it.
Because you requested it, I am going to go over here in the corner, and I'll just be over here.
Dave's not in his normal office, so he's a little off his game today. He doesn't have his like wall of action figures. He's not in the zone. Yeah.
I wondered why you walked towards the wall like you were reenacting the end of the Blair Witch Project. I mean, that was...
yeah, right. I'm just going to stand in the corner and stare at it until everyone starts crying and leaving the theater.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, last of the 5 of the Force. Who is your favorite interviewee that you've done thus far?
Oh, wow. That's tough because I've been very fortunate over the years. Yes. I've spoken to some really cool people. I would probably say, not just because he's not around anymore, but because I was just thrilled that it came my way. Be Irvin Kershner, I interviewed him nearly 20 years ago, and that was magical. And he was such a gent. Every time I tried to steer it onto, you know, Man Called Horse or RoboCop 2 or anything else other than Empire, you know, he knew I wanted to talk just about Star Wars and he kept pulling it back to Star Wars. And after about 5 minutes, I thought, you're such a sweetheart. And we just talked about Empire.
Yeah, that's so generous. Yeah,
it was awesome.
Amazing. Yeah. Was there like a tidbit that he dropped that has stayed with you at all, or some kind of bit of information that you're like, wow, I really didn't think of that.
I think at the time, I didn't quite realise, and this is before the Rinsler books, really. It was 2007-8, so I guess the first Rinsler book had come out for Star Wars, but not for Empire. The fact that he, you know, they really wanted him to do Jedi, and it was him that said, no, I've just given 3 years of my life for this. I don't think I can do that again for another one. And it's just one of those sliding doors moments where you think, wow, look what he did with Empire. What could he have done with Jedi? Yeah. We just lost David Lynch, and he was, you know, mentioned, and there's other directors. You think, wow, I wonder what they would have done. Not to knock at all what Marquand did, and the whole team. It's a phenomenal film, but you do sometimes wonder. I wonder where that would have gone. Like if Kurtz hadn't have moved on and he just stuck around, you just wonder how it would have been. Yeah, but I think that was the thing in the moment. It was like, wow, look what he did with Empire. What would he have done with Jedi? I mean, they're very different films, so it might not have worked. And you look at Kershner's whole career and you think that's the one that absolutely plumb nailed it. So, you know, lightning doesn't always strike twice, but yeah, I think that was probably the moment.
Wow.
I do kind of have a theory that Star Wars got us into the universe. Empire Strikes Back kept everyone in that universe
Completely.
for the past 40 years, 50 years. I don't know how long. It's been a long time.
It has been.
Do you want to try another awesome segue, Dave?
Yes, I do want to try another awesome segue. Speaking of Empire Strikes Back, let's go back to Star Wars. What was your first introduction to Star Wars, and can you take us through that?
Yeah, it was. So obviously I'm in the UK, so we got Star Wars quite a few months later than you guys. You got it May, obviously late May. We got it late December, just after between Christmas and New Year. So where I live in the middle of the country, we didn't get it till sort of Easter 78, but we were very, very aware of it because it was breaking all the records in the States. It was making the news here. It was in the newspapers. So whereas Star Wars came out in the States and was like a sleeper hit that just exploded very, very quickly, in the UK, we knew it was coming. So we knew this juggernaut of the thing was coming. And we kind of, bearing in mind, I was only 6 when I first saw it. But, you know, you'd seen pictures of the characters, but you didn't really know what they were, who they were or anything.
Yeah.
So when it came out, the first thing I got was my mom's best friend, Marilyn, like an auntie, really. She bought me issue 6 of Star Wars Weekly because I was a big reader. I used to read Spider-Man Weekly, and I was a big reader as a kid. I never get time now, but I was a big reader as a kid. And so I remember getting issue 6 of Star Wars Weekly. My uncle gave me the copy of the novelisation he'd bought. My other uncle gave me the vinyl, the double vinyl. All sold it to me. It was all pocket money sales. They didn't just give it, they made me work for it, which was kind of cool looking back. And also probably remember the sort of the oblong fold out magazine that you used to get in the cinemas back in the day with beautiful black and sort of dark cover. They were the first things I remember getting. And yeah, I was hooked because, you know, being a UK kid, it was Doctor Who with the wobbly sets, Blake Seven with the wobbly sets as the theme. You know, anything they could use to make it look like it was alien or sci-fi techie, they'd pull it out the dumpster. And then Star Wars comes along, which just looks $1 million, well, literally $1 million. It cost 10, but you know, just looked phenomenal. It was so far ahead of everything else, but light years ahead, and still looks amazing now. There was no way as a kid I wasn't going to get hooked on that.
Yeah. Wow.
Was there a particular moment or character that really hooked you in, or was it just all of it? Like, okay, so you spent a couple months kind of easing into the galaxy because you've got the vinyl, you've got
before
the comic
you
books.
were a fan. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you saw it all come together for your first time, what was that like? How did that affect you?
When I first saw it, because I think a couple of my friends had already seen it, so I wasn't like the first kid in the class to see it, and they were just raving about it, as kids do, like say 6-7-year-old kids. I think I do remember the first thing I saw was Han versus Greedo because we arrived late. So my first Star Wars memory isn't the Star Destroyer coming over; it's Han and Greedo facing off. So that's quite a thing. And I do because my dad was self-employed; he just started in business at the time. I kind of nagged as much as I could. Dad, could we go and see this film? And I think he kind of wanted to see it. Well, I know he did. And like I think back, if I was 6, he was probably only 30, not even that. Wow. So you know, he wasn't that old himself. So you know, we went to see it. We turned up 45 minutes late. Han and Greedo, that's the first thing. And then back in the day, then you used to pay one ticket to just let you stay and watch it as many times as you wanted. Star Wars that stopped all of that weirdly because it was so big. Yeah. But we just stayed in. Yeah, we just stayed in and watched the next screening. We got up to the Han and Greedo bit, and I'm thinking, I'm going to get to see Star Wars again. As soon as it was the Han and Greedo scene finished, Dad went, go on, and off we went. But yeah, so my memories of it is kind of skewed. So, and I'm a Han Solo guy, definitely I'm a Han Solo guy. So I kind of think Han Solo, but I do remember when I went to buy my first figure, I was convinced, I was absolutely determined to buy C-3PO. That character really, I thought 3PO was hilarious.
He's the best.
He was just so fussy British butler, and I wanted that figure. And I remember going to the toy shop and they didn't have C-3PO, but they did have the Death Star droid. And I just remember thinking, close enough. And I bought the Death Star droid. It kind of looked like C-3PO.
It's silver.
Or CP3O, as I told everyone, it's CP3O. My friend Gary, who ended up working for Cosmopolitan magazine as like an editor, was like, no, it's C3PO. No, it's CP. And we had this big argument. Anyway, bye. And it's just weird now. Like years later, I've interviewed Anthony about 7 or 8 times. to the point that he kind of recognises me now when I see him at events and such, which is kind of cool. And just casting your mind back in the day when I was like that big, wanting that C-3PO figure. I've never told him this. He doesn't want to hear that. But yeah, it's very cool. So it's funny the things that hook you in, the little things that because like I say, my aunt getting me a comic was a masterstroke, really, looking back. And it's passed away a couple of years ago, and I always told her, this is all your fault. I blame you for all of this. If you hadn't have bought me that comic.
That's so sweet. I'm curious. I love how, this love of the franchise and the films as a kid has grown into such an amazing career for you now. What was it about the first film or even, as, the later films came out that really resonated with you? Like, was it the archetypes? Was it the story? Was it the world building? What really gripped you as a kid?
That's a really good question. I'd love to. It's the McCartney thing, isn't it? If I knew how to write a Beatles song, I'd write every song will be a Beatles song, sort of thing. It's not that, because I'm not a creative. I'm a consumer, if that makes any sense. But whatever clicked with me, obviously clicked with a lot of other kids. But the one thing I think is beautiful about Star Wars is that everybody's Star Wars story is different.
Yep.
Every single one. We couldn't have come in on the same film, but one kid might get hooked by a figure or a comic or a computer game or whatever it might be, or the music or whatever. I think for me, it was so far ahead of everything else. Mm-hmm. It was so engaging. Like a million kids around the world, I completely fell in love with Carrie Fisher. So there was all these little hooks that just Harrison Ford was and still is the coolest guy ever. Mark Hamill feels like a kid you would know at school or did. Mm-hmm. There were so many relatable things about Star Wars, and it just looked so amazing. I think as a kid at school, we listened to a lot of classical music. And so John Williams coming in with that score was immediately engaging. And this is in the 70s when disco's going off and punk's going off and all that cool music was happening. And yet Star Wars was just grabbed you. So I think it was just a mix of everything. But also, not that I knew much about film when I was 6, 7, 8 years old.
Sure.
But I was aware then, I think, that we were being given a look behind the curtain at how this is being made. Because, they would show you, not only the making of Star Wars being on telly, but you would see other programs that would show you how, Ray Harryhausen did the creatures in Seventh Voyage of Sinbad or whatever it might, or how they did the Kong, Rick Baker and that did the Kong, 76 Kong and stuff like that. So you would see certain things. And then Star Wars is going, oh yeah, that X-Wing you think's 40 foot long is actually that big. And they would show you how they did it. And I that got me interested almost as much as what was happening on the screen. So it's a massive mix of stuff. But I'm still as hooked, weirdly. I mean, I'm not as, I'm 53, so you can't be as mad on something in the same way you can when you're 6. And obviously I know a lot more than I did when I was 6 or 7. There's no way I'm a bigger fan than I was when I was 6 or 7, knowing multiple times more than I did then, because then it was everything.
Yeah, it's the whole world.
It's the whole world. Yes. And now, there's not a day, there's probably not, I don't know if this is sad or cool, there's probably not been a day since when I've not, at the very least, thought about Star Wars, if not written something about it, or done, or edited a podcast, or done something.
Well, but this audience would think it was very cool.
Well, that's good. Thank you, audience. Yeah. But it's a weird relationship, and it does evolve as the years go by. But sometimes there's no better palate cleanser than going back and just sitting down and watching the first one and forgetting everything else. Just get lost in that first film because that's the one that pulled us in. Like you say, Empire kept us. Star Wars grabbed us. Empire bear hugged us, and and it never let go.
That's interesting because it's one of our questions that we were curious about is how has your fandom evolved? Because it is a very different thing from being a fan and following it, and being a fan and kind of a guide for other fans as a writer, interviewer, podcaster.
Commentator.
Yeah. How has your fandom evolved with all that attached to it?
A lot of people, especially people I know, this is something I say a lot, that the playground when we were kids was our internet, because who else are you going to talk to? So that was it. Yes. So now, I mean, I'm talking to you guys, and the other side, not literally the other side of the world, but you might as well be.
Yeah.
So
we're under the swings.
Exactly. So we could, we are. It feels like we are. Definitely on the roundabout. So there's all these things that you can do now that you had a sort of version of then, but it does evolve, and a lot of kids grew out of Star Wars and probably now look back and go, oh, I used to love Star Wars when I was a kid, and actually really kind of like Star Wars now. But for me, and that's not just me, there's plenty of others like me, I never stepped off the train, so I was always into it, and other interests came along. I really got deeply into Marvel and DC comics in the 80s. Like full on. Yeah. Still got 10,000 comics in that next room. Marvel and DC is all bagged up. So that was like a full on thing. And then when Jedi came out, I really started to get into Star Trek. And then when Next Gen came out, and ILM did the visuals for that, and mega into Trek. So like the whole golden age to the 90s, Trek was huge for me. And there's a nice relationship with Trek. There's a massive loads of overlaps between Trek and Wars.
Oh yes.
And I later on I ended up writing for StarTrek.com and the official magazine. So there was some nice sort of connections there. But yeah, it did evolve. I think the thing that really hooked me in was West End Games with their role play when that came out in '87, and it feels like people sort of point to that time as the start of the dark times. Because the comics have now finished and Ewoks is kind of done, and there's nothing really happening till Heir to the Empire. The Blackthorn comics came out, the 3D comics, but not a lot else. Fantha Tracks finished and became the Lucasfilm mags. The focus wasn't Star Wars anymore. George is going off and he wants to build Skywalker Ranch. So there's different focuses. I think for us, when West End get hold of that license, and it felt like they could do whatever they wanted because nobody else is doing anything with Star Wars, we were role playing 3 nights a week. It just made me smile when you said, have you got your D6? Because the first thing I thought of was West End Games. That was so busy for us. And we created, me and my gaming group, I wasn't the GM, my friend John Hicks was the GM, who's he writes for the Alien roleplay game now, he's doing fantastically well. But we built this whole corner of the galaxy that was enormous, and we role-played in it for 10 years. And then when we finished role-playing, we started writing fan fiction. So my first website back in 96, was a news site that very quickly became a fan fiction site. So the first, the starts of the website stuff was all fan fiction. So that was our sort of that kept us involved. So it really did evolve, but the collecting thing never stopped. I mean, above me is my collection room's above me, and it's like the whole floor of the house upstairs, and it's just I need help.
We kind of all need help when it comes to collecting.
Yeah, I got to fit in the storage unit.
Yes, exactly. The storage unit's a big thing. While we're talking about collecting, because I've got a ton of questions now. Do you have a favorite item or an item that has particular meaning to you?
If I could only pick one thing, I bought the hardback art of Star Wars, a place in Birmingham called Nostalgia and Comics, which was, I think it was the oldest comic shop in the UK at the time. And I was with my mum, who's long gone, sadly, but I saw this hardback art of Star Wars up on the wall, and I knew I didn't have quite enough money for it on me at the time. It's not like I was a kid, I was in my 20s, I just didn't have quite enough cash. So, Mum, it was like 30 quid or something. I haven't got 30 on me. I didn't bring my cards, only bought cash today. Mum was like, fine, I'll sort it. So Mum got it for me. So squared it off with Mum. So fantastic. So I've got the hardback art of Star Wars. About maybe a year later, I went to the NEC in Birmingham, a big convention centre in Birmingham, and Ralph McQuarrie was there doing just some random off-the-cuff signing thing, and nobody in the queue. My friend John, who I mentioned earlier, just went off to get a bite to eat for us both, and I just sneaked in the queue and said, excuse me, would you sign my book? And he looks at the book and his eyes lit up. I said, oh, wow, I've not seen one of these for years. And he's browsing through the book and he signs the £5 from a Macquarie autograph, signs the book. Wow. Then I had the issue of Fantha Tracks, where he's on the cover painting the snowscape from Hoth.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had that inside, and I went, I brought this as well. I didn't know how much you were charging. And he went, also, and he just signed it, didn't charge me for it. He hadn't seen that for years. Because all he was signing was like the portfolios, which everybody was bringing. And at the time, he'd released this beautiful little box set with stamps. It was all Macquarie art on stamps. It was a lovely little book and postcard book. And that's all he was signing. So when he saw these two, he was, and I remember, I had 5 minutes with him. Nothing memorable about the conversation other than I can say I spent 5 minutes talking to Ralph McQuarrie. So I would say probably that. And a good friend of mine took that book to Paris and got Joe Johnson to sign. Got Joe Johnson's autograph in there as well. So I'm
That's a good friend.
He's a very
Yes.
good friend. So now
Yeah.
I'm chasing Phil Tippett. I want Tippett to sign it. So, I'll get through it. I'll get there. So, but it's
awesome.
with just Ralph in there. That's enough for me. I'm
That is really fantastic. How did you go from like just talking to these people at conventions to interviewing them for Star Wars Insider?
Yeah, walk us through what's the professional journey
how'd you
there?
make that jump? and are you like an English major with a writing background? How did you start? How did you get to interviewing
Dave's
people?
like, how can I be you?
yeah, exactly.
I got very lucky. I think I just got very lucky because I was pretty early doors on websites. So I'd been doing fanfic. That's its own thing. Fanfic is, you know how people look down at fanfic, but I loved doing it.
No, it's a creative outlet. Yeah.
Exactly. That was exactly it. That was getting those stories and transposing them from the role play sessions and turning them into short stories and building these characters into a sort of a cohesive thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the website started in 96. I'm not techie at all. I'm still not. I can write. I can provide content. I can't do anything else really. Although most of what's on Fantha, I tend to have a hand in it to one degree or another. I know what I know. I'd say it's the best way of saying it. And then in, 2000, I kind of remember how it came about. I think I just must have seen him on a chat room or a message board or something, Kevin J. Anderson. And I just reached out and said, can I interview you? And this is pre-Skype, pre-anything. It's all email. And he came straight back, certainly send me some questions and I'll get them back to you. And so my first interview was Kevin J. Anderson, which was 2000. So was that 25 years ago? Good grief.
I know.
And then I think the one after that was Dave Prowse, which was great fun, and he sent me some great answers. And so I just got into this little rhythm. It's on my sort of second site I did, Lightsaber, which I ran for 10 years. With just getting into doing these interviews, and the cool thing was other sites like the ForceNet would share it, and other sites would share it. And so I think Lucasfilm kind of saw what I was doing with these interviews, and that's how the Kershner thing came out. I reached out to Lucasfilm probably 2006. Well, actually, no, I reached out to Sanskrit. I was trying to do an article about Spielberg's relationship to Star Wars, and Sanskrit came back and went, "Don't waste your time. They'll never publish it. They'll never touch that. It's something that will never get written about. Even though there's loads of connections, it's not something they'll ever put on, on paper." I think that started a kind of a relationship with Lucasfilm that built. I interviewed Rick McCullum not long after Sith came out, got chatting with him, and he said, "Oh, I'll put you in touch with Kershner," and a week later I'm talking to Kersh. So all these little lucky accidents happened. One of the people I interviewed back in 2005 was a guy called Frank Parisi, who was the editor of The Insider at the time. And when we'd finished that, again, email correspondence, I said, I read Fantha Tracks when I was a kid, read the Lucasfilm mag, now read Insider. If there's ever the chance to have anything in Insider, just to say I've written an article for Star Wars Insider, I would be thrilled to bits. So he says, okay, well, send me some ideas. So the first thing I wrote was in 2006, which was a review of a Hasbro event at the NEC, the NEC again in Birmingham, and just a small couple of paragraphs in the sort of the opening part of the magazine, half a page, a few pictures, and I was thrilled to bits. I framed the check. I don't even think I cashed it. I framed the check. I was so thrilled. And I thought, if I never do anything again, I've written for, I could say, issue 90, September 2006, Star Wars Insider, that's me.
I love it.
Which was great. And then I interviewed the incoming editor, Jonathan Wilkins, who ended up being a good mate. And again, I had a similar thing with him. I said, what do I need to do to do something else? And it was the Empire 30th anniversary at the time. So it was, 2010? And I'd written a lot of, like I say, I'd interviewed Kershner, interviewed a lot of the Empire actors. He says, we'll use snippets of your interviews that you've done on Lightsaber, but I need, so he said, I need a piece with Alan Harris. You've interviewed Jeremy, you've interviewed a few of the other bounty hunters, other people have done bits. It was a collaborative piece. So I need Alan Harris. Bearing in mind, this is 4:00 on a Friday afternoon, and he needs it by end of business. And I think I look back now, and I think it was a bit of a test. So I was going to an event in Wales called Starmania. I knew the guy that was running it, so I phoned the guy. Actually, phoned the guy up and says, "Look, I need Alan Harris like yesterday. I need it for an Insider piece. Can he help me?" And he gives me Alan's phone number. So I phone Alan up and say, "Hi, Alan. We've met, but you don't know me. My name's Mark Newbold. I'm writing a piece for Star Wars Insider. Could you just give me 10 minutes?" And I explained what it was for. And literally, I've got no way of recording it. So he's saying it and I'm writing it down as he's saying it.
Oh my God, how stressful.
And then, and then I just take this, he's told me, and I tidy it up into a nice, tidy paragraph, and I email it to John like an hour and a half later. And I think back and I think that was the moment that I think that saved his bacon, because he could get his work in by the end of the weekend and yada, yada. And it just went from there. And I just started sending bits in. Then I took over when Bonnie Burton left the magazine. She did Red 5 and My Star Wars, and I kind of took over Red 5 and My Star Wars. And they were great because it was right in my wheelhouse of the sort of stuff I was doing, and started to do a few fuller interviews and feature articles. And and like I say, it's 2025 and issue 230, which is out in a few weeks. I've got an interview with Anthony Daniels. So, I think 200, nice. I'm pushing 200.
Wonderful.
Articles in the with reprints, including reprints. They get reprint. They never tell you when they're reprinting. We've got to find that yourself. But I just got very lucky, and it was the same with StarWars.com. I knew Matt Martin, and I used to write for a site called Jedi News for about 7 years. And James, who ran that site and still does, got chatting to Matt, and Matt said, I'm looking for some bloggers to come on board and, do some stuff on StarWars.com. And we got lucky, and I was doing that for sort of 10, 12 years. So it's just, I think you get to know people, and it just develops, and always in the background doing, Jedi News for all those years, and now Fantha for longer than it was with Jedi News now, or insanely. It feels like we've just started and it's 7 years, but so it's just daily grind. And you do find a lot of people, certainly podcasters, say, "Oh, how do you get to do what you do and stuff?" It's just, you just got to do the donkey work and just got to keep grinding it out. And
resourcefulness is what I'm hearing. Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
You had your
making sure the check's clear. Making sure the check's clear.
I was gonna joke and say you had your Devil Wears Prada moment. You got the Harry Potter manuscript, and the rest happened, right?
Yeah.
You know what I was thinking? I was thinking it was his Dagobah cave moment. And instead of taking weapons into the cave, he brought a pen and some can do.
That's awesome.
Sorry. I'm just imagining Yoda going, take a pen with you, you should. Yeah, take a pen.
That's the special edition I want to see.
Like you've done fan fiction, you've done the interviews, you've run Lightsaber, you've run Fantha Tracks. To me, that suggests a lot of fan interaction in some capacity. How do you think the fandom has evolved over the course of the 40, 50 years since Star Wars has come out?
I can only speak to the fandom in retrospect up to a point. So when I started doing stuff online, even then it was you didn't have social media, you didn't have defined places to go. So you had, in the mid-2000s, you had the Star Wars blogs, and that was a great place to throw ideas out for people to chew over and agree or disagree, but always respectfully. And lots of friends I made there that are still friends today. In fact, one I need to reply to because she got in touch the other day, but that's another subject. And then I think with social media, initially it was great because it was like the old Friends Reunited thing. Oh, I can speak to kids I knew at school, and I can reconnect with people I've not seen for a long time. And I think once the sort of the new car smell of that wore off, then people started to get a bit bolder, keyboard warrior mentality, to the point where it is now, where it's just people. It's every other thing you read is just bait. It's just engagement bait. So in that sense, I think, if you want to whittle it down to the Star Wars fandom, I think it has actually regressed rather than evolved. Back in the day, it was the zine culture, that the fan mags and stuff like that, and there was always nice little groups and conclaves of people there. So that was more healthy. But even when Empire came out, the people who loved Star Wars hated Empire, bashed it, and walked away saying, "I'm never going to watch Star Wars again." So there's always been a negativity in the Star Wars fandom. And it's a very different fandom to, let's say, Trek. It's the obvious comparison. I think Trek's an older, more mature, more open fandom because the subject matter of Trek is more, it's that kind of...
Yeah,
it definitely is. You look inwards with Trek, I think, a lot.
Yes.
Star Wars spectacle is a big part of Star Wars. Coolness, nerdiness, cheesiness. There's so many elements that go into making Star Wars work that aren't actually things you think are good, but actually when you put them all together, they are. It's a weird balance. But I think the fandom, I think it's an evolving fandom. I've been in and around it for 20 plus years now. And so the people that were prominent in the fandom when I came in, which was certainly the sort of the ForceNet era, sort of mid 2000s going through, and that's nearly, like I say, that's nearly 20 years ago. You know, a lot of those people aren't online anymore. Oh, they are online, but they're not doing a lot now. They're not doing pods. They're not doing stuff. And all the people around that, the sites that were big like Club Jade and stuff like that, that just aren't going anymore. It's weird that we, you know, as some of the guys that are still doing Fantha with us were around then, are still doing it. And we're not, you know, we're not big high level like some of those guys were. Some of those, like Jimmy and Jason at Rebel Force Radio, are Star Wars superstars. We're not in that bracket, but for a while we were doing podcasts on their network, and so you're kind of in that circle. So it does evolve. I just wish the fandom as a whole could get back to being able to sit down and discuss a concept or discuss an idea, and one person have an idea and another person have an idea, and they don't necessarily gel, but none of the finger pointing, you're wrong, I'm right, that mentality. And I think that's a societal thing as much as a fandom thing. It's kind of got off the rails a little bit. So I do miss just chewing things over, because half the time somebody will say something, you suddenly go, you know, that's a way better idea than mine. I like that thought better than mine. And you just go with it. So, and I think that's where the fanfic thing, kind of fanfic mentality comes in, because that's where you take it.
I kind of wanted to circle back to that a little bit, because we touched on that a little bit, and I keep it keeps coming back to the forefront of my mind. Like, I think it's interesting that there's this, like you kind of said, people put down the fan fiction and yet are so quick to accept like Legends books and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's like,
oh my God, talk about finger pointing. You just opened up
I mean,
we're going to be canceled by somebody.
Are we going to be?
No,
I'm curious your perspective, because you've written a lot. You've dove in creatively in that way. You've explored these characters and you've given them new stories and you've opened up new worlds, and you've even branched that out into the audio dramas as well, which I think is very cool. I don't know what the exact question here is, except, you know, what do you say to folks who maybe put down that creative outlet?
They're missing a trick, because I mean, what we did, we took a few known characters, and bearing in mind, my first fanfic I wrote we were going to do a video drama as kids. We were like 10 or 11, so it was like 81.
That's so much.
And you know, so we all come up with our own characters, and we come up with these ideas, and one friend played the keyboard, so he was going to do the music, and you know, we were buying fishing wire to hang our X-Wings off to do the special effects and all this stuff. Never got further than that. But the year after, in 82, I did write, you know, a short story, and ended up writing 2.5. I never finished the third one, but writing 2.5. And that was the start of it. And so we take certain characters like Lando. So, little story. So, issue 11 of Return of the Jedi Weekly in summer of 83, I sent a reader's letter in. But I sent it in as my fanfic character, Jan, Jan, Jan Lamona. That's my fanfic character that I role-played with and wrote all these stories about. And came up with this whole history for him that's, you know, still knocking around out there somewhere. And put it in the magazine. And in the magazine, it was the whole Danny, Cheedo, Rick Jewell, that whole stuff with Lando and Drebel and, you know, Lady Luck and all that whole storyline, the Stenos stuff. And the letter was written in response to what was going in the previous week's episode, the action in the episode. And so I just wrote this letter in character as Jan, and thought nothing of it, quite ignoring the fact that I got loads of letters, because you used to put your address in, loads of letters sent to my house thinking I was Jan, as in Janet or Janice, so the thought I was a girl, and 10-year-old or 12-year-old me was highly offended and threw the letters up and threw them in the bin, because I was like, I am not a girl. You know, I couldn't conceive that they didn't understand I wasn't a girl. Why would they know? They probably thought it was the coolest thing ever. Yeah, I wish I kept those letters. I really do. Anyway, so you know, so you've gone through that level of it, and I don't know. I just think that the outlet, that the opportunity to take a character, especially an original character, and have them meet some of these well-known characters. I think if you're going in and writing a story about Darth Vader fighting Luke Skywalker in between Empire and Jedi and you know, like it happened, then you're kind of missing the point. But if you can find little cracks and nooks and crannies and tell stories in there, or what we did and have your own area that was sort of one of the satellite galaxies, and just tell it up there, and just dabble with the broader sort of the histories of what's going on, which is what we did. I just think it's great fun, and I look back at some of the earlier stuff and then some of the later stuff. Not that I'd ever get published, but I I can see the progression between between one and the other. So, and I've not written anything for about 10 years, and I'm really getting the itch to do it. I want to get my old site like that. I kept the URL. I want to get it all back up there, and I'll do a bit of a tidy up, because some of it's a bit 90s.
Sure.
So it's a little bit, things that you might not have seemed out of place then. You read them now and go, oh, that's a bit, so make a few adjustments and stuff. But I'd like to do that, and just change the canon as well, make it fit with what's going on as well.
It almost
you could reboot it, so like you just brand the old stuff Legend series, and then I don't know what you'd call the new stuff.
I love it.
Disney
well, it
canon.
sounds like you and a lot of your friends, I mean, you guys were ahead of your time in a lot of ways, because I feel like what's happening right now in the franchise is, everyone's so itching for more content. And so they're starting to explore these kind of side stories. I mean, Skeleton Crew is a perfect example of it, in other parts of the galaxy. I mean, there was a lot of people who I think didn't enjoy the Star Wars suburbs and everything. I was like, give me more of that.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah.
I thought that was so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I love that so much. That's awesome.
Funny you mentioned the suburbs as well, because I got to interview John Watts and Chris Ford, and one of my questions was, how did you know the sweet spot? Because Trek's done sort of suburby stuff, and other sci-fi shows have done suburbs. Mm-hmm. Star Wars has never done suburbia.
No.
We've had people scratching around the Jakku, living in holes in Tatooine, living in opulence on Coruscant. You've seen it in Andor very recently. Rebels, you had sort of standard Star Wars looking places. But you've never seen suburbia. I think they absolutely nailed it. I thought it was fantastic. And they said we were really careful, just so you kind of go, that's a school bus. That's a school bell. I'm friends with Dave Collins, who does a lot of the sound effects for Skywalker Sound, and it's like, how do you know that you're not going too far down a certain road where it doesn't? Oh, you just got to feel it. You just got to feel it. And I think half of Star Wars is like, that just feels right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, one of my favorite scenes is when he's pouring the cereal in the bowl, but he still has the blue milk. But it's still so I don't know. There was something about that
so matter of fact,
it made me smile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
I also really liked it, and it worked for them, that the idea of what suburbia is, a safety place, a place that is protected from like gangs and bad guys, pirates, and how that was so much a part of that story as well. So that like for me, I was a little put off by the suburbia, but by the time I got into the story and realized what it was representing and why it was necessary, I was like,
a world
it has to be that.
Yeah.
And also, I think when you get to the final episode and they go, I mean, they're back at us before that, you see all the stuff in the vault, but when you actually see suburbia again and the pirate ship coming in and the threat, then you suddenly realise what people are fighting for. One thing I said online was, I think the kids in Skeleton Crew and the families with them are the people that the soldiers and warriors in Andor are fighting for. That's what they're fighting to protect. Because I would guess that probably, 75% of the galaxy is like a kind of, some's more well off than others, but most people are living in a kind of suburbia, whatever that planet's version of it is. It's people like us. Most people on Earth, not all, there's people in terrible poverty. There's people with it just vile wealth, but most people sort of swim in a band in the middle, some better off than others, but generally, and I think a lot of the Star Wars galaxy is like that, and they're what the Empire is fighting to control, and the Rebels or the Resistance are fighting to keep free. So I think that's a very engaging thought as well. And Skeleton Crew really showed that off to, visually for the first time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of these elements, one of our favorite questions to ask all our guests is, what are 3 elements that make Star Wars to you?
Nice segue, Dave.
Yes.
I know, I nailed it that time.
In no particular order, the music is hugely important. I think that's kind of the sort of the soul of it almost, and it doesn't always have to be John Williams. There's been some other great, some other great music.
Yes.
Ludwig Göransson's music for Mando is fantastic. The Nicholas Patel's music for Andor, I play it all the time. And there's some John Powell's score for Solo is my favourite non-John Williams Star Wars music. I think it's phenomenal. So I'd definitely say the music is mega important. So I think Star Wars doesn't like I said earlier, Star Wars doesn't have to be the coolest. It doesn't have to be the best designed. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, you see I always mention Star Trek, it's just the easiest comparison, but you see a beautiful ship in Star Trek and it's like, wow, that's gorgeous. Wow, look at that ship. That's fantastic. Because you'll notice outside of Starfleet, most ships aren't that pretty. You know, Starfleet's got the aesthetics, but that others don't. So Star Wars doesn't need to be particularly cool. Oh, I'm really rambling on this answer.
No, we love it.
That's all right.
There will be 3 points in here somewhere. So the music, the fact that it doesn't have to be the coolest thing in the galaxy. I would say it's tough. Like you alluded to earlier, there's a desire for more content now, but I do worry sometimes. And we talked about this on the podcast recently. I don't know if Star Wars actually, when you drill down to the bones of it, I don't know if Star Wars was ever built to be like a Republic serial where there's another one. And I think a huge part of what made Star Wars work in the 80s, especially the 70s and 80s, and certainly to the prequel era time, was the anticipation. You go and you wait for, you know, this film's coming, you wait years for it to come, you sit down and watch it for the first time, you know you're going to watch it again at the cinema, then there'll be a year's wait till it comes out on video or whatever, you know, Laserdisc or whatever your format was back in the day. And then you've got to wait 3 years for the next one sort of thing. The anticipation, there isn't the anticipation anymore. So we just had 7 weeks and we had 8 episodes of Skeleton Crew. It was fantastic. And it's there forever to watch whenever we want. My phone, I can watch everything Star Wars on that right now. Well, not now because I'm talking to you wonderful people. But, you know, when we finished, I could find it on there in minutes. I kind of miss the days when it wasn't so easily available. Now, I know kids today would look and go, what are you on about? You don't want to be able to watch anything whenever you want to watch it? No, I kind of like, it's like when a great song comes on the radio, and you can now because of digital radio, but you couldn't back in the day. You couldn't just hit pause. You know, you had to give it your full attention. And Star Wars back in the day, you had to give it your full attention. And I think that's why we drank in it and just, you know what I mean? Just loved it.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm watching Star Wars and I'm like, I need to go for a wee, or I want to make a cup of tea, or whatever, I can just hit pause and go and come back, pick it up and carry on. It doesn't grab you. I'm not just I'm picking Star Wars, obviously, anything.
Yeah.
Nothing has your attention. The only thing that has your attention to the point of, I've got you for 2 hours. If you want to watch this whole film in the cinema, if you want to watch Deadpool and Wolverine and not miss a thing, you better go to the toilet before you come in. You better make sure you got your popcorn now, because the projectionist isn't hitting pause. That's the only avenue. Live concert, obviously, live music. You know, they're the only places where it's got you. And Star Wars doesn't live in the cinema anymore, and it won't until May next year. And let's hope that they get the wagon rolling again, because Star Wars badly needs to be back in the cinema. But my very long-winded answer to a very quick, simple question is anticipation. I think Star Wars requires anticipation, and at the moment it hasn't got it. But if it's a great, I'm itching to see Andor. So I'm now getting that.
Yes.
The anticipation bubbles are starting to foam up now. You know, so there's things to be excited for and anticipation. But yeah, that's my long-winded answer. Pick out of that what you can.
I love it. But I just, I really resonated with what you said about the anticipation for the theater, because to not totally pick on Star Wars, I think it was the reason why the following phases of the Marvel Universe didn't land as well. It's because so much of it ended up on Disney Plus. Yeah. Like there was something about waiting for those films that just hit different. Yeah. Nothing will ever. And I'm kind of prepared to stand by this. And I'll be interesting when I'm on my way out, whenever that is, to look back and go, you know, there never was a moment in the cinema quite as good as Steve Rogers standing there with Thor's hammer and all the portals opening up, and on your left, you know, at that moment. Is anything ever going to top? Spider-Man came close, but is there ever going to be a moment as good as that? I can't envisage it. You know, and I'm sure that's what they're going for in Doomsday and Secret Wars, but I can't imagine a moment that will ever touch that. So the magic of cinema is still alive. Yeah, it is.
What is your favorite Star Wars memory? I mean, I feel like we've touched upon a ton, because you have a lot of great stories and memories. But what is one of your favorite Star Wars memories?
There's little personal moments, like when they showed the trailer for Force Awakens the first time. I was with Jedi News then, so me and James were in the auditorium, and the whole blank Chewie we're home moment, and I just lost it. I just lost it. And it's on the documentary. A friend of mine who was an Australian chap who I didn't know at the time but knew later was filming him and his son. It's called My Saga. And if you watch My Saga, when that moment happens, if you look just to the right, you can see me about 4 rows up, hugging James. It's really funny. I didn't know about it for years. And somebody said, I just saw you on a documentary. Really? And also another moment, I don't know whether it's a favourite moment, but it's a memorable moment, was the 40th anniversary when John Williams came out and the flutist started playing Princess Leia's theme. That was almost too much. That was almost too much. Yeah. And I just remember I was with a friend of mine, Big Kev, who's part of the team, is a smashing fella. And I looked around the immediate locality, local people near me, and everyone was crying. And I was trying to, this sounds weird, out of context, but it isn't out of context. You guys know what I'm on about. But just looking around, and Kev just went, man, just go with it. Just let it go. And I just looked like a baby. And because it was like, we've just lost Carrie. Billy Lord just come up on stage and said what she said. Harrison's there. George is there. Everyone's there. Everyone is there. And it was just, that was overwhelming.
Wow.
But I'd probably say my favourite moment, this is such a flex, I guess. I very fortunately got into the after party for Force Awakens. Long story short, I would have been there with Jedi News doing stuff on the red carpet, and some of the team were there, and they got to interview everyone, including Harrison Ford, which was very cool for them. But I did some little sort of interstitial like mobile phone adverts for O2, which is a mobile carrier over here. And so the prize, or whatever you want to call it, for doing these adverts, which are out there on YouTube, they're very funny actually, was tickets to the premiere. So I took my wife's in a wheelchair, so wheeled her onto the red carpet. Ruth will tell everybody I was the first person on the red carpet. And we went in and we watched Force Awakens, and then came out, and a friend of mine, Craig, who passed away very sadly last year, had 3 tickets to the premiere, 3 tickets for the after party. And he said, I've got a ticket for the after party. And I said, I can't leave Ruth. And he went, she's in a wheelchair, isn't she? Aren't you a carer? You both get in on one ticket. I was like, it was worth a try. So we bundle ourselves into a taxi, Craig and Kimberly and me and Ruth, and we go down to the Tate, and we go to the back entrance where the wheelchair entrance is. And the guy asks for the tickets, and I give him the ticket, and he went, just one? And I went, yeah, I'm a carer. And he went, okay. And he took us to the back, and we go up in a lift, and the doors open, and I wheel Ruth into the room, and it's just celebrities. It's the cast of the film. It was unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. So I got
Craig's a real one.
Oh man, I got a picture with JJ. I ran over Oscar Isaac's foot with Ruth in the wheelchair. That wasn't the best moment. I had a 10-minute chat with Gareth Edwards, and my wife didn't take a photograph. And when I said, "Please tell me you took a photograph of that," she went, "I just thought it was one of your mates." So, luckily, I met him afterwards and I've interviewed him, and it's all good. But at the time, because he saw me, and grew up about 20 miles from here, so we've got a similar. He picked up on the accent, and he looked at me like he knew me, and I knew who he was because he was still editing Rogue One, and we just got chit chatting about nothing. It was an amazing night. So that's probably
an awesome story.
That was very, very lucky. Yeah, very lucky.
Yeah.
Oh.
I've been very lucky.
No, and you've taken advantage of it. Like, luck is preparation, and what is it? Preparation?
It's preparedness and like seizing the opportunity, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah. Or opportunity. Preparation meets opportunity.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've just been around so long now, they just see me and go, let him in.
Yeah. You're like the carer for Star Wars.
It's fine.
Let him in.
Yeah.
What would you like to see in the future of Star Wars?
That's a really good question. I wish the Acolyte had hit bigger, because I think it was very bold to move into a completely new era, and also quite forward thinking to do it as a television project rather than a movie, because you had 6 or 7, or was it 8 episodes to really flesh out the era. And whether or not they nailed it and did exactly what they wanted, that's obviously debatable, and it didn't connect as they wanted it to. I still think it'll come back in some form or fashion. I'd love to see an animated sequel to Acolyte just to carry on the story, because I know Leslie Headland had plans to sort of move forward through the years towards Phantom Menace. So I think that's very brave. I definitely want to see more interesting takes like Skeleton Crew, because I think I think that's a way deeper show than people probably give it credit for. I think a lot of people just go, it's a show for kids. Oh wow, really? Watch it. If you're a Star Wars fan, there's so much going on in this show. The fact that you've got 4 really good kid actors in it, and Jude Law, and Nick Frost, and all this other stuff is just such a treat. But what I really want for the future of Star Wars, and again, it's something we talk about on the podcast, is I don't see any reason why now, when Star Wars returns to the big screen, when Star Wars came off last time with Rise of Skywalker, Disney Plus had just got started. If you remember, there was the moment where Rey heals the snake, and in that same week, Grogu healed Grief Karga when he gets injured, when he gets shot.
Yes,
and it's the same Force thing, and they tied the 2 things together. That was so cool to see that, and you think, there's great opportunity there. We've never had the chance to go back to the cinema since then, other than re-releases. Obviously, Jedi got a re-release and Phantom and such. I really hope that whatever, not Mando and Grogu, because here's the thing I noticed, and I'll say it on your podcast before I say it on mine. I think Mando and Grogu is set before the Razor Crest gets destroyed. You see a Razor Crest in the trailer. Yes. I think this film is before season 3. I think it's before the ship gets destroyed. So I think we're going back in time a little bit in this film. Okay. That's just my. Oh, wow. Maybe he just goes and buys another Razor Crest. It's not like there's not millions of them. But
they're like Toyotas.
Exactly. Well, exactly. Right. I hope that they run a Disney Plus series concurrently with a movie. So
that'd be cool.
We've got the Rey stuff coming up. I don't see any reason why they couldn't do a TV show that runs parallel or supplements what's happening in the film, just so they can play off each other a bit, because they're only going to help each other. You don't need to see one or the other, but if you do, then great. It's not a requirement. But I think there's, again, with the fandom, there's a negativity that certain outlets would say, oh, well, you've got to watch the TV show to understand the film. No, you don't. But anyway, that's for Lucasfilm to market. So I want them to use these opportunities, storytelling opportunities, to the best effect. But most importantly, I want to see Star Wars back on the big screen. I love Star Wars on television. Animation, if Star Wars on television was only animated, I think I'd be happy. I want to see more Star Wars movies, but I'm contradicting myself, because I like the gaps, and it wouldn't. There wouldn't be the gaps. And Star Wars isn't Marvel. You can't release 3 Star Wars films in the year. Like, you can comfortably release 3 more. We've got 3 coming this year. And Daredevil, and Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and X-Men 97 Season 2, and all the other stuff. So you can do it with Marvel. It's not the same with Star Wars. So I'm kind of contradicting myself, but that's probably the worst answer ever. I definitely want more Star Wars, but I want them to be bold. Let's say that. I want this to be bold.
Which is when I feel like when Star Wars is weird or surprising is when it's at its best.
Yeah.
Solo. All that crazy stuff in the Maw and all that stuff, so out there. And it works so well. While they've not made a sequel to that, baffles, and I'll never get over them. We should be on Solo 5 by now.
Even or a series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our final question for you right now. We talked about your introduction to Star Wars, about that first comic book you got, about the West End role-playing game days, and then that transitioning into fan fiction, that transitioning into doing interviews for Star Wars Insider, which I still find incredible. All the way up to crashing the party for The Force Awakens.
They so should have kicked me out.
No, we all think that, but I think if you've got your way there, you deserve to be there.
Work your hustle.
Yeah.
And with all that kind at the surface of your mind right now, what does Star Wars mean to you?
I've been into a lot of things in my life. I mentioned the comics and Trek, and I'm a heavy metal fan. I'm a big Iron Maiden fan. I'm a football fan, so I'm into my team, West Brom, and there's things I'm into, and I'm very focused on family and the things that really matter, obviously. And I've got a job, I work, and so there's all the things that happen, that have to be nurtured and taken care of. But I honestly can't at this point. I don't think I've ever tried not to. I can't imagine Star Wars not being in there somewhere. to varying degrees, and some days there's more and some days there's less. I'll give you a little example. When we used to go on holiday, I used to take the laptop and I would do stuff on the site every day. I posted to the site on my wedding day. I posted to the site on the days both my parents passed away and their funerals. It's always in there. It's something I've always done and never felt selfish. Thank goodness. That's mostly down to Ruth because she's a sweetheart. She knows this is my passion, and I think that's it. It is my passion. When we finish this conversation, I'll go down. I'll prepare something for tea, evening meal. I'll sit at the computer, and I'll probably spend the next 5 or 6 hours doing stuff on Fantha, writing comment reviews, prepping articles for other people to write stuff on the site. I do a bit of editing for one of the part work, so I've got a bit of that to do. So there's always something to do. I've got a couple of book pitches going in, so I've got work to do on them. So there's always something, and there's always something to look forward to. That's the point. I've never been on a film set. That's a dream. I've never had a book out. I've been mentioned in books. I've been thanked in books. I get a lovely thank you from Adam Christopher in Shadow of the Sith. That was very cool. So there's little things like that have happened. Rinsler used some of my interviews in he's making a Jedi book, so I'm in the bibliography there. So there's things like that have happened, but I've never written a book. So that's my big, I want my name on the spine of a book. So when I'm gone, somebody will go into a bookstore and they'll go, that's that book my Mark wrote. So that's the big sort of thing that I want to do. Most of I've been to most places. I'm friends with Sanskrit, so I've been to Rancho. I'm fortunate enough to have been to the Ranch and Presidio, and I've been to places. I've been to, filming locations, and, we did Finch last year and where they filmed Empire, and been to Death Valley. So there's lots of things I've done like that, and most conventions I want to go to, I've been to. I've never been to San Diego. That's on the bucket list.
Same.
Yeah, I definitely want to do that. Just to say I've done it,
Yeah.
Just monkey off the back. But I can't imagine a day where I'm not at the very least thinking about it. But it's always buzzing along. I mean, my phone case is that. It's
an Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, and weirdly,
mine's the Tatooine sunset, as close as I could get it. Yeah.
Oh, very nice, very nice. And weirdly, I found out that a friend of mine who I've known for about 20 years drew this as like a pre-production piece, and some, phone cover company in the Far East got hold of the artwork, and then he put a picture of it online the other day, and I went, "Wow, that looks just like my phone." And he went, "Yeah, it's because I drew it." So, wow, random stuff keeps happening to me. So yeah, I can't imagine. Some days I love it more than others. Some days it can feel like a chore. Some days, and you just have to gut through it, because the website's my pride and joy. And thankfully, like I say, my friends and family, and especially Ruth, they know that. So they kind of know. I get a little bit if I can't get to the site, or I can't, or the Wi-Fi is down and I can't post, I'm a little bit antsy. So as long as I can get a couple of things on the site a day, I'm kind of happy. I'm like a Star Wars junkie.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I think we all are in our own way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is awesome.
And you wouldn't do stuff like this. You guys wouldn't do this if there wasn't a love for it.
No, absolutely.
And that beautiful shorthand that we've never met, but there's a shorthand already. That's Star Wars. That's Star Wars.
That absolutely is Star Wars.
What a beautiful button. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. This was so fun.
I've loved it. I knew I'd enjoy. As soon as I saw you guys, I thought I'm going to enjoy this. So I'm really, really pleased that it's been every bit as good as I thought it would be.
Oh, so awesome. Glad to hear that. Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on.
Where can people find you?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, there's always a red dot on me somewhere, so I'm assuming somebody's found me already. You can generally find me always at Fantha Tracks. Mm-hmm. So me and the team at Fantha Tracks on all socials, and fanthatracks.com if you want to head to the website. We've got our YouTube channel as well with our Sunday night show, Good Morning Tatooine, and all of our pods. We've got 7 pods sort of going at the moment. So actually 8, we do a celebration pod as well. So that's always nice and busy. There's always shows on there. And if you want to find me online, I'm a Hitchhikers fan as well. So it's Prefect, it's in Ford Prefect, Prefect_timing. You'll find me on Instagram, X, I guess you call it now, and noodling around on Facebook. So yeah, I'm always out there somewhere. And I love, as you guys know, I love to talk.
Yes, we love it though.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. I feel like first of all the those links will be in the podcast notes. So if anyone wants to just click on through, you can connect directly there. And I feel like we barely touched upon your full story with Star Wars, but hopefully sometime in the future we'll get back to you and do a sequel, do an Empire Strikes Back. This one grabbed them, the next one will hug them.
Perfect. Let's do that. Let's do an Empire. I love it.
Thank you, Mark, and may the Force be with you.